I was a senior at Harvard. I took a class called African and African American Folklore and Mythology. The class was basically what the name suggests. We studied folklore and mythology that originated from Africa and African Americans. So think Brer Rabbit, Uncle Remus, Anansi the Spider, all of that. And it was taught by a brilliant woman, Professor Maria Tartar. And she was white. This is important for the story, I promise. And because of the nature of the class, we talked about slavery a lot because that's where a lot of these stories originated. We talked about like the Gullah people, the Geechee people. One day, I will never forget this. Professor walks into class and she's so excited. She's like, I did it. I got us access to see the daguerreotypes. Dario, what's a daguerreotype? Well, a daguerreotype is one of the earliest forms of photography. This is before like regular cameras and such. And the pictures are printed on like a silver plate, so it's a mirror. It's reflective. Remember this for later in the story. Anyway, everyone in the class knew exactly what daguerreotypes she was talking about. These daguerreotypes were commissioned by a very famous Harvard professor named Louis Agassiz in the 1850s. And this man believed in polygenesis, which is the idea that basically black people and white people are from different races, like different species. And he really wanted to prove that. So in 1850, he went to South Carolina and found a plantation and decided to have these daguerreotypes of enslaved people there at the time so he could prove his theory. Keep in mind, daguerreotypes are really expensive, so the only people that have access to this type of technology are really rich. Anyway, the story has it, he comes back up to the north. He's so excited because he has these daguerreotypes, aka pictures of enslaved people. He shows them at a conference or some meeting. And apparently the people there are like, actually, don't ever show this to anyone ever again. And he doesn't. He never shows them again. It's not until almost 200 years later in the 1970s, someone's cleaning out the attic of a Harvard museum that they find these images. They find these daguerreotypes. During my time at Harvard, these became like a hot commodity. And not anyone could just go see the daguerreotypes when you want it. They're really fragile, so they have to be viewed specially, stored specially, handled specially. Only people with like pull or clout would be able to access them, which is why my professor was so excited that she got us in to see them. So maybe the day after that, we all go to the museum. There's about 10 to 15 people in this class, and the majority of us are black. That's also important for the story. And we go into this really dark room, and we have a museum curator with us, and the daguerreotypes are carefully laid out in these like gold plates. And she has on gloves and the whole thing, and she's telling us, basically to be careful, not to touch them, and, go ahead and take a look. And when I tell you words cannot describe what I saw, I had seen images of slavery before, but nothing quite like this. And remember when I said the daguerreotype is sharp and reflective? It's like a mirror. So it felt like they were alive, like they were looking in our eyes and I was looking back in their eyes, and they looked like me. They looked like my grandfather, my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles. And the room was so silent that you could hear a pin drop. When we got to the last one, we all stood against a wall. And the museum curator was like, do you guys want to take a second look? And no one responded. I'm not going to post a picture of what the images look like, but you can look them up. Still, it might not do it any justice because the daguerreotype is such a visceral experience. As soon as we walked out that room, so many of us were in tears, just bawling, like hysterical. The experience had such a profound effect on me. I actually wrote about it in my Yale Law School admissions essay, an essay called A 250, and I'll read just a part of it for you here. The daguerreotype is an early photograph known for its hyper-realistic quality. Last month, my professor took my class to see daguerreotypes at Harvard Peabody's museum. Accompanied by a white-gloved assistant, the curator explained how Louis Agassiz, a Harvard professor, commissioned images of enslaved peoples in order to bolster his theory of polygenesis, which argued that people of different races belong to different species. Neither I nor my classmates were prepared for what we saw. In his attempt to dehumanize, Agassiz ironically brought the subjects to life. This rehumanization is precisely what made it feel so wrong to be staring at them, for they all had been posed for the camera, some without clothing, but all without their consent. When asked if we wanted a second look, the room fell silent. The glass wall that often disconnects the scholarship we study from the experience of those who lived it had shattered. As a class, we decided to draft a letter to the director of the museum asking that Harvard donate the images to the National Museum of African American History. Acknowledge in truth the brutal representations of these immortalized slaves should not be hoarded as treasures unlocked by a privileged few. They deserve to be shared, and perhaps the institution that perpetuated the suffering captured in those photos is not the best home. If you're like, Dario, why are you sharing all of this now? Just last week, a woman who's been suing Harvard, claiming that two of the enslaved people pictured in the photographs, Papa Renti and Delia, his daughter, are her direct ancestors. And this legal challenge has been going on since 2018, 2019, around when I graduated. Just 2 weeks ago, Harvard decided to settle the case. This is her here, Tamara Lanier, with her attorney, Ben Crump, and Susanna Moore, who's one of the great-great-granddaughters of the Ghazis. And the images are going to find their rightful home, Paulita Museum in South Carolina, that's dedicated to honoring people with those history. I think it's a reminder to me and for all of us to not give up and keep going, and to continue capturing and photographing moments in history, especially when you feel like there's moments of injustice or things that are going wrong in this country or the world. History will remember.